Hello, 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 hello. Marco Montemagno here, SMEs Mobile Strategies 2014, powered by Apps Builder. And I'm so happy to be here with you again for another super interesting session with our guest from Equimedia, Jonathan Moore. But can I say, you are the best hashtag of these mobile strategies, because Join John was always in my head, so you and your team, your social media team did a great job to create this viral buzz. But I saw Join John, it was great. It was a genius idea. So I don't know who invented it, but it was great. So John, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Very good. Looking forward to this session.
Very good. So Equimedia, let us know. You head of SEO, right?
That's right. Yeah, I'm sort of SEO across the business. I also sort of handle web analytics through our accreditation through Google as Google Analytics certified partners. So I've got a couple of areas of speciality.
Okay, fantastic. And let us know in 30 seconds more about Equimedia. Where are you based, guys? What are you doing? And a lot of companies connected, and maybe there is some good clients that I can bring to you, and I will have a 15% cut for it. But no, I think it's interesting to know a little bit more about Equimedia if someone is not familiar with you guys.
Yeah, sure. Equimedia. We're a full-service performance marketing agency. We're based in Swindon. We also have offices in London. We've been established now since 1999, and we cover all sort of aspects of digital, from SEO, paid search, display advertising, affiliates, right down to sort of digital design and development as well.
Fantastic.
So we sort of cover off everything.
Very good. All right. So, John, I would suggest we go straight to your presentation. The topic is related with Google Analytics. So, analytics and mobile, very interesting topic. And by the way, I read your post about the importance of moving to Universal Tracker, the new release of Google Analytics that provide more data, and maybe will be an interesting topic also to discuss today. And so if you just try to set up your slides, would be great to go into your presentation, and then we chat around with the people in the chat. Can I say bye to the people in the chat while you set up your presentation?
Of course,
again?
yeah, I'll do that now.
Yeah, again, I would like to check where are they from, because I'm always curious to see from real-time analytics. So that's helpful to check the main countries. So we have UK, United States, Germany, Spain, Brazil. What are you doing from Brazil, guys? Switzerland, France. So a lot of countries connected. I'm very happy about that, and we'll try to be super useful. If you can, John, just set up your slides in full screen mode so that we can see the full screen, and would be the best way to get your presentation. Okay. By the way, analytics is so important now. I mean, I was telling you before about this Universal Tracker, and they give.
Okay. Have you got the presentation now? Have you still got the?
Yeah, it's the working mode. If you go out from the screen share mode and you go back and you just try to share the desktop, the full screen, is probably the best way to do it.
Okay, so
Hangout on Air screen share, John, no worry, is the worst feature ever made by Google in their whole life. But yesterday evening.
Is this better?
Yeah, this is perfect. This is perfect.
Brilliant.
Just to tell you this story, yesterday evening I was we had this session with Aaron Bali from Udemy, the founder of Udemy, huge e-learning marketplace. And I said, Aaron, why is so difficult always every time to share slides on Hangout? And he said, well, we tried to do a similar system, and we know that it's really, really, really difficult. So it's just technology, but it's getting better. Anyway, I can see the slides very good. I hope in chat everyone see everything great. Hi to Miguel from Brazil. 8 a.m. there, he say, but is present. So good effort, and let's go.
Brilliant. Okay, so first of all, thanks for inviting me along today to speak. So I'm going to start off really with just the first point, really, on like how to set up GA. And it's largely dependent really on how your site is optimized for mobile. Um, and a few considerations there really. So sort of move on to the next point here is that lots of you're gonna we encounter lots of different sort of setups, from the fully responsive to guys that have dynamic serving, even some people that are using mobile subdomains or even separate sites, for example like .mobi. Um, the challenge with this is just understanding like where the data will go in GA. So if you put the tracker on the page, on every page on the site, then actually where it's actually going to, the data's going to go, and then actually where to go and look for it. So the first two items on this list, fully responsive, dynamic serving, it's fairly easy to sort of find out and segment mobile sort of site usage data. I think if you're on a mobile subdomain or a separate site, that can be a bit more trickier, sort of partitioning that out. So again, it can depend on what sort of on what so it's important just to bear that in mind, really. Okay, so I'm just going to go on to talk now really about what current sort of version of the tracking code you're using. And again, the most recent version of the tracker code is what we refer to as Analytics JS, and that's for Universal Analytics. And you can go and check that. If you're not too sure about what version of GA you're running, you can go check that in your browser. You can view the source, press Control U, you can see the source, and do just a search for analytics.js. If you can't find analytics.js, do a search for ga.js, and you should be able then to sort of find the version of the tracking code that you're running on. If you move on now to just actually show what the sort of the new universal tracking snippet looks like, you can see it's probably like slightly different syntax than maybe what you're used to. And again, it's worth considering migrating. There's a load of really good new features in Universal Analytics. You've got things like demographic reporting. You can set up retargeting lists as well, and there's the potential, to set up your own sort of custom sort of definitions as well. So it's a very useful thing to consider upgrading to, and you will have to do it now. So sort of Google now sort of auto-migrating a lot of properties and accounts. So you may notice that your account's already been auto-migrated. The easiest way to do this is to go into the admin, have a look at the change history, and you should be able to spot there quite easily if say, there's a sort of system-generated alert to say that your property's been auto-migrated. And that's really just a back-end change there, just for them just to sort of get you to think about making the change. So you can do the migration yourself, and then once the sort of the back-end migration's been done, you need to think about upgrading your tracking code. And again, on the slide here, we've got an example of sort of the latest sort of universal tracking code here that's running on analytics.js.
John, sorry to interrupt you, but I'm just curious about this point. So the starting point, basically, that you say is important to migrate to universal code. So just a little change in analytics code, but provide very interesting features. Demographic, I can know exactly the age of my visitors, or male or female topics that they could like, or whatever. One question here immediately is, does it work also for the past data, or from the moment that you do the migration forward?
Yeah, so as soon as you migrate, I mean, that there shouldn't be really any issues with historic data. It's still going to be there, and it will still be sort of processed going forward. Essentially, when you flick the switch, say for the demographic reporting, the demographic reporting will then sort of be collected from that point forward. There's normally a latency on that between 24 to 48 hours, depending on sort of whereabouts in the world you are. But you should start seeing that demographic data from that point onwards. But in terms of any historic data that you have in your account, you shouldn't really worry about that too much. We have seen some bugs where we've seen auto migrations might happen, and we've seen a few little bugs, but then they seem to sort of correct themselves again within sort of the 24 to 48 hour window.
Got it. But let's say the demographic data are related with data from the moment that you do the migration.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, if you don't want to migrate to Universal Analytics just yet, you can change the sort of the legacy asynchronous code, and you can change that to basically I think it's dc.js. And again, you can enable demographic reporting that way. So there's an option to do it on both the sort of the classic analytics and the new sort of Universal Analytics.
Okay, but and John, sorry again, but I'm so curious about this topic you can't even imagine. I know that Google knows everything. Okay, they know everything, sure. But how do they know if my audience is the segment 25-35 or male or female? I mean, what kind?
Yeah. The easiest way to sort of explain that is if you actually go to sort of your Google account and you click the settings there. I haven't actually got the link in this deck, but it's surprising what it knows about you. So it'll know like your gender and your age from basically your Google account. So there's things like that, and your interests as well. It can build up a profile based on that as well. So that's where the interests will go. Your affinities or in market sort of interests again will be based more on your browsing history. I wouldn't describe the demographic reporting as bulletproof by any means. You know, we see on like some shared logins here that we use across the company that we have some pretty interesting sort of interests, very varied. But it's a very useful feature, especially now if you are an SME. You know, and you just want to sort of dip your toe in the water, finding out like who your users are, what ages they are, what gender. You know, it's very powerful information, and it can allow you to sort of you can what we call data-driven decision making. You can use that to make some powerful decisions. You know, based on your sort of your content strategy, your social media, and so on and so forth. So let's say
it's not perfect, it's not bulletproof, but it is a good indicator of your demographic of your users.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I mean, so this just sort of really just cover off the tagging here, and you know, I think you know again it's something you should definitely consider doing, the migration to Universal. All the auto migration should be done approximately by Q3 2014. And from that point onward, we've got about, I think it's 2 years before Google sort of discontinues and stops sort of processing the old sort of data or running on the old tracking code. So the next point really is to try and keep your GA account as neat and tidy as possible. What I tend to see sort of from time to time is that say if you've got the subdomain or the different site, like let's say a .mobi configuration, I tend to see people, you know, they either create separate accounts or they'll set up different properties to track these. Sort of my advice would be to have everything running off one single tracker, ideally, and you know, and then use sort of either filters to segment data into the view that you want, or then use sort of advanced, you know, the advanced segments that you've got available to you then to sort of find and partition your sort of mobile data. If we run on now, just to sort of go through sort of the sort of the general GA sort of account structure. So everyone will sort of be familiar with like in the account, you know, that's what you log into. You have your account, and it's the main sort of access point you have for your data. Below that, you can then start setting up multiple properties. Ideally, I think in this situation, there isn't normally a good use case that you'd want to sort of put your mobile site or your mobile subdomain on a different property. I'd try to avoid doing that. It can be worth setting up different views for mobile, desktop, and tablet sites. But it's really easy to go into actually your main reporting view and then use advanced segments then to segment your data out. And again, if you want to isolate a particular user, you can do that. Again, the big advantage, the property is that with the subdomain tracking, again, it's important you can have the users, they move maybe between a mobile subdomain and back to the main site, so you've got that consistent journey. If you've got everything on a responsive site or dynamic serving, the URL should hopefully be the same. So again, you shouldn't have sort of the issue there that everyone's basically accessing the same data, so there shouldn't be any issues with it there. A good dimension to look at with if you have got data on a subdomain is the host name, and you can pull that into your custom reports. You can pull that in as a secondary dimension, and again, that'll allow you to segment and filter data based on that subdomain. So if you have got everything coming into a single sort of view, that's a good tip. So I'm going to move on now to about using segments to isolate mobile users.
Sorry, can you repeat about this latest point? I think was very interesting. If you have a subdomain, what's the best way to track it?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so setting up tracking subdomains. If you're using Universal Analytics, it's got subdomain sort of tracking built in, so you don't have to worry about sort of customizing the tracking code. If you're running on sort of classic analytics, you're going to have to enable the set domain method. So you're going to have to modify your tracking code slightly, and you can get that through the admin console in GA. There is a sort of the interface there where you can check the radio button that you want, and it'll insert this set domain method for you. So as a principle there, you have to have that enabled, and basically that'll allow then the sort of the first party cookies then to be passed between say your main www.subdomain to then your mobile subdomain. So again, it's just ensuring that the cookies are being passed over and you're not generating new sessions or basically sort of self-referrals as you move between the two. So if you've got subdomain tracking set up correctly there, then you can then use that hostname filter then to either filter out your mobile subdomain or just look at your mobile subdomain. So that's the thing to sort of look for there. That's the cue to sort of use for filtering. Does that help?
Yeah, right. Okay.
Brilliant. Cool. Okay, so moving on now to sort of segments. I think most people will be familiar with what advanced segments are and the sort of the power that they offer you. At a sort of as a default, you've got when you're in the sort of the main sort of GA interface, the segment builder can be accessed by sort of clicking the down chevron. There should be sort of like a circular sort of icon with all traffic by the side of it. And when you see that the segment builder, if you click the system defined ones, you've got all the mobile ones in there by default. So you should be able to isolate tablet, mobile and tablet, mobile, and then you should be able to get desktop out of there as well. So you've got tablet and desktop. So there's a few options in there. And also, like my tip here is that if you want to isolate maybe mobile organic, for example, my advice there is that on the right-hand side of these sort of system-defined segments, there's a little down sort of arrow again here, and if you click that, you can copy it, and then you can use these sort of system-defined ones as like the template for creating more advanced segments that are looking at multiple conditions or criteria. So I'd encourage you to sort of look at them. But I mean, to begin with, if you haven't really used advanced segments before, I'd again recommend looking at the system ones. They're all really useful, and again, look at isolating those particular sort of mobile traffic sources that you're interested in.
John, Miguel in chat here about it ask you if the GA basically can track with advanced segments or in a different way if it track Flash-based pages or sites that are made in Flash.
It is possible to track Flash. There's a Flash SDK. that does require a bit more sort of technical knowledge and know-how. There is information on the help forum which I can post you to sort of how to do that. But it's embedding sort of the GA tracking code within sort of your FLA file, and then sort of when you compile it, then when you basically click on certain, say, Flash elements, then that fires like a page view or an event within the GA tracking. So it is possible to track Flash. It's a little trickier. It does require some sort of development expertise, but it's definitely doable.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, moving back to advanced segments, I think segmentation is the key to sort of all sort of data analysis really within GA. You want to be able to understand what your different traffic sources are doing. Because they will have different goals, they will be digesting different things, and again, you can use that sort of insight that you garner from the reports within the segment to apply, to make your site better, and to look and to spot optimizations. Okay, so the next sort of thing I'm going to go through is show you how to sort of compare device category performance. So by default within GA, there are two sort of mobile centric reports. They're both within the audience section within the sidebar. So the first one's accessed by, if you click the audience in sidebar, it'll contract, and then you should be able then to access the mobile reports. And then if you navigate down, you can access the mobile overview report. And the mobile overview report's just very useful because it allows you to sort of see within the data table each sort of device category and how different the different metrics vary across the different devices that you've the different devices you've got. So again, just to sort of take you through like how the data table works within GA, it's split out into what the guys at Google refer to as ABC. So with the ABC, you've got acquisition on the left, so that's sort of like how you're getting your customers onto the site. The behavior is the behavior metrics, the stuff that they do once they're on the site, and this is a good idea that they're engaged users. And then finally, you've got conversions on the right. So what you see is an end-to-end view of sort of site performance. And again here, what you can do, this sort of report will allow you to sort of spot outliers, and again, you can compare things like bounce on your desktop and mobile device, and just see how they compare. Again, I think it's important with like a metrics like bounce, for example, that there's context to it. Again, it's not unnormal to see a higher bounce rate on a mobile device. Again, there's quite a lot of reasons behind that. So again, it's once you maybe spot an outlier like a high bounce rate on a mobile, it's to then go and do some further analysis and just sort of see, is that skewed by one particular channel, or is it maybe one particular device that you're having issues with? But again, I would use this report to get an understanding of how your different devices are performing, and again, use that then to come up with some suitable optimizations.
By the way, John, I suggest to the people here with us in this session to do what I'm doing. I have basically my Google Analytics open, my dashboard, and I just follow your your presentation, and I try to see if I can find exactly what you say. So it could be very useful.
Brilliant, thanks. So the next mobile report I'm going to take you through allows you to sort of compare your device performance. And I think the key thing with this is, and this is quite a useful report here, because obviously you'll just see all the in the sort of data dimension column on the left hand side, you'll see all the sort of the mobile devices that your users are using. In this example data here, this is pretty common. You see our Apple iPhone and Apple iPad at the top. But it's not uncommon to see some unusual devices in here. You can see things like Xboxes, for example. Another good one just to point out there is like sometimes you will see something like not set. That normally happens like when, say, someone like Apple releases a new version of an iPad and it's sort of not picking up that user agent. So panic too much if you see not set. That normally sort of resolves itself a few weeks after like the next big device has been launched. Another really useful area of this report here is the primary dimensions. I don't know if you can see them along the top, but the primary dimension there allows you to sort of toggle the different information that's pulled into the into sort of the dimension column there. And again, that's something I would encourage you to check out there. You know, and a good tip there is, you know, you can use it just to see who's coming in. And again, you can see the operating system again. So again, you can sort of drill into, is it an iOS issue? Is it a Microsoft sort of issue? And again, you can even look at things like service provider as well. That can be quite handy to see if you're getting a lot of sort of traffic from one particular ISP. And again, you can use that again just to maybe this an idea for some of you developing future relationships with maybe them. You know, if they're sending you a lot of traffic through their portals. But again, the principle of this is this will allow you. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I found also a mobile input selector. I've never seen it in my whole life.
Right. Yeah.
Crazy.
So that'll show you like it's like yeah, you do see some people like with track wheels, for example. So again, it's again just making you aware that you might have some of these older devices that people are using, and you might have a really important sort of user segment that is accessing your site using some more of these more legacy devices. You know, and that will vary by sector, by niche. Again, like you're like a tech niche, you know, you could expect people to have like the latest up-to-date sort of devices, but some old, you know, some segment people will have like the more older things. So again, it will allow you to spot those outliers within the data table, and again, you can then sort of think, okay, I can make some improvements here. It's not working as well as I'd like it to on, say, Samsung. So again, it's allowing you to spot things.
Got it. I have a real life question here. I'm checking my analytics, okay, following your slide. And one thing that I don't understand is the following. If I go, I just took, you know, just a segment of data, so I have no idea if I did it right or not. But if I check mobile device info, I have iPhone and iPad, like probably they are almost 60% of the device, okay? Mm-hmm. Then if I go into the operating system, I have, no, I'm an idiot. No, I have iOS, which is, yeah, 60%, and 40% Android. The reason why I was confused is because Android is so segmented. So there is not like Android 40%, but there are, you know, Samsung, Nexus, so there are a lot of devices. So probably this can bring some confusion. iPhone and the iOS world, you see it because it's just a huge segment there. Right.
Okay, cool. So going to move on now to sort of actually like from a more strategic sort of point of view is that just understanding like what the user intent is of your mobile users. And again, it is really important to bear in mind that they will have different goals and objectives. So again, for a SME, for example, small to medium enterprise is that, you know, a mobile goal is that someone might be looking for directions to your store. They might be looking for your telephone number. They might not necessarily have that intent to transact. They might be, you know, reading your blog because you sent them an email newsletter. So again, they're going to have different goals to correspond with that. So it's important to develop what I'd refer to as a mobile conversion framework. And again, to sort of borrow a concept from sort of Avinash, Google's sort of web analytics czar, you know, he's introduced this concept of macro and micro conversions, where you know, your macro conversion is your sort of primary conversion metric, and more often than not, you know, that could be a lead, that could be a transaction on site, someone actually buying a product. But it's important to understand that there are different micro supporting conversions, and again, These will allow you to understand if your site's successful at sort of each different stage of the buying cycle. So if introduce sort of say a linear buying cycle where the user sort of goes through awareness, research, consideration, and then purchase. If you're just focusing on that macro conversion at the purchase sort of stage, the buying cycle, you're not getting an understanding of like how the site is working at like awareness. For example, so are people coming in? Is there a high depth of visit? Or the research, again, good indication of like that people are researching is that time spent on site. Consideration could be people looking at your About Us page or viewing FAQs or looking at information on shipping, for example. But the key thing is to just try and develop a conversion metric and just understand that mobile visitors will have a different goal. So they're going to be looking at different things. So it's worth treating them differently, again, so you don't neglect the channel completely and you don't treat it necessarily the same as desktop.
Okay.
So in the example here, I've used a sort of an analogy here with football. So I've got this from FIFA. And again, here, sort of the goals per match would be the sort of the primary conversion, and then indications that you're on top would be maybe that the more passes per team, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're scoring more goals, for example. But it gives you an idea of actually how well you're playing.
Right. So the macro goal in the end is I think sign up, for instance. So a guy who sign up. That's the macro goal, and I can say my conversion rate is 5%, 3%. And before I try to track micro conversion, that give me basically more details about what it works during the flow, during the path of the user, something like
Absolutely, that. Yeah, and it helps you understand if you're building sort of pipeline and you've got that flow of customers coming to site. And again, especially like maybe if you're in the B2B niche where it's a much more complex buying cycle that can go out over, say, a number of months. So again, having those micro goals, again, allows you to understand that you've got leads in the pipeline or that people are at least considering your service or your offering.
Got it. Okay, very interesting.
Okay. Next sort of report, and again, not everyone might not be aware of this, but I mean, goals and e-commerce reports will need to be configured. So by default in GA, per view, you can set up to 20 goals, and you can also, if you have a shopping cart, you can set up e-commerce again, so you can pull in that product and transactional information into your site, and again, it will give you that information on sort of what are your most popular products, what's your average order value, and things like that. But by default, they're not configured by default, so you're going to need potentially, you're going to need to look at setting them up. Now, the biggest, most common mistake I sort of see, or the barrier to sort of setting up goals, is sites that have, say, a contact page with a form submission, and the form submits to the same page. So that's probably the most common one there, because if the form submits to the same page, it's very difficult then to set up a goal. It is possible. You can set up what we call a virtual page view that is basically set to fire by sort of an event listener using a piece of JavaScript to fire a page view when the user clicks submit on a successful form validation. But that's a little bit more complicated. So ideally, you want to have a contact form that's sort of either two-step. So you go to /contact, and then when you complete it, you go to contact thanks, and that'll allow you to be really easy then to set up a goal there. Another option perhaps is to use maybe Google Tag Manager for these sort of things, because Google Tag Manager, you can set up event listeners and you can fire macros. But again, that's a little bit more complicated. But my advice with goals is, again, just to make sure that you have a state change on the URL for each step in the funnel. And again, that'll ensure that you'll be able to set up those goals.
And about this, I'm here in front of conversion and the goals tab. Do you suggest to have a look at this goal flow visualization or funnel visualization? I always get confused with this reverse goal path, funnel visualization, goal flow. Where do you suggest to start from?
I would say if you're new to GA, the goal flow report is a lot better than the traditional funnel visualization report. The funnel visualization report has a number of issues, like if you skip a step, or if you do what we call backfill, or if you do loop backs, for example. Now, the goal flow actually does a much better job of actually showing you the user flow through from sort of start to finish. The other thing that it's pretty good at, which you can't do in a regular funnel visualization report, is apply an advanced segment. And again, like the key thing here is that you can segment it straight away to get an idea of what how your mobile users are flowing. So the goal flow is very useful. So I definitely encourage you to check that out once you've got your goals set up, and use it more than the funnel visualization, because there's a lot of quirks of it, and it can be quite confusing for someone that's not familiar with all the quirks. And the other great thing is that you can set sort of this, you have a dimension node on the left. So in the screenshot there, you can change that dimension node, which is set to source, so you can see how the different dimensions flow to completion as well. So that's a very useful feature as well.
I like it. Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely encourage you to start with the goal flow. And then sort of really quick note on e-commerce as well. So e-commerce does require a special tag which you put on your on your confirmation URL. And again, the key thing there is that you need to programmatically pass basically the variables from the shopping cart into the tag. So again, if you're using if you develop the site yourself, you're going to need some developer to help you do that. But again, if you do that, it gives you all the ROI information. If you use, say, for example, say you got a WordPress site, for example, there are plugins available that do this for you. I believe Yoast's analytics plugin, he's got an e-commerce module available for that, and I think you have to pay a small amount of money, but I think that'd be pretty useful, again, just for setting up e-commerce reporting if you're not technical but you're desperate to get it on your site.
Tell us again what you mean with the e-commerce report. I mean, are specific reports for e-commerce or are just the different segment that you set up in analytics?
So e-commerce reports relate to sort of all e-commerce transactions. So basically, there's sort of three main e-commerce dimensions, which are product, the product SKU or the product number, and then you've also got category information. And it'll pull that information in along with sort of some transaction sort of metrics like the transaction amount, the VAT, or the shipping or delivery costs as well. So you can pull that information into the reports, and then what you can do then is like go to reports like your channel report, and then get an idea of what the sort of the per visit value is for each channel again. So it'll give you an real good idea of how each individual's channel is performing, and again, it give you that sort of that sort of e-commerce sort of value of actually what the user's doing.
I see. Very good.
So now I'm going to move on now to sort of so what channels perform well on mobile. So if you go to the acquisition sort of section of the reports, you can go to the channels, and there's this new report which has introduced this new concept of sort of default channel groupings, which are system-defined channels. And this is pretty useful because until about a year ago, it was really difficult to sort of get social sort of traffic aggregated into one place, for example, or display or email in this example. So we got some custom sort of channels sort of coming in here on the example. And again, the key thing with channel performance is that different channels are going to have different metrics. And I think the key thing here is, like, if you're doing a lot of email, and and people look at email on mobiles, right? So you want to make sure that if you're sending someone an email newsletter, that the content, the click through is actually the page they land on, that is can actually be rendered in a mobile device. And the key thing here is, it's not unusual to see email have like something like a really high bounce. There's a lot of context to that. But again, it allows you to sort of compare and contrast different sort of conversion metrics, and how they perform across each and individual channel. And again, if you've got things like e-commerce reporting set up, you can get a per value as well. So again, it allows you to understand like how they're working together. And again, another tip here for this is, again, if you go into, if you click, email, for example, you drill into the email channel, you can apply what we call a secondary dimension here. If you put in device category into the secondary dimension, you can see how, that channel will perform across the 3 different device categories that you've got. So again, that's a good way of actually isolating email on, a tablet, and compare it to email on a desktop, and then finally email on a mobile.
Interesting. Tell me again, what's the secondary dimension? I'm doing it live for the people following us in chat. I'm the guinea pig of your...
Brilliant, yeah. So secondary dimension, it's a really, really useful feature in GA. So you can basically pull in another dimension to sort of pivot your data by. In particular, with a mobile focus, it's that device category one. And again, what you can do is, once you pulled that secondary dimension in, you can set up filters on the right. So on the filter sort of search bar, then you can then just isolate it on that secondary dimension. Again, it's a different way of sort of crunching the data. You might be more comfortable using advanced segments, but I like adding in secondary dimensions. I think they're really powerful, and they're underused. So in this case, device category is a really useful one. If you've got it on, if you've got like a host name, you can set the host name one up just to isolate your mobile subdomain as well.
Wow, phenomenal! I am right in front of me. Yeah, I by the way, I love secondary dimension. I think is really, really useful to. We do it, for instance, in Super Summit to understand exactly what time. What's the hour of the day that perform better with our sessions. We do a lot of video webinars, so we want to know, okay, on that page, on that time, what's the result, and secondary dimensional are very good for it.
Yeah, and it just gives you that option to pull in some dimensions that aren't necessarily in the reports by standard. You can get a full list of them as well on the GA help. So if you do a search for Google Analytics dimensions, there's the page you'll land on there. You can filter them to be basically what sort of area of GA they're available in. If they're available in the API, if you can use them in the front end, or if you can use them in custom reports as well. So it's worth just knowing that exists. So if you're not sure what you're looking for, there's probably a dimensional metric that's already sort of pre-configured for your sort of own reporting needs. So we're going to now go on to sort of how to sort of set up some custom tracking for email and social media users. I think it's very important to set up email custom sort of campaigns within GA. If you're doing this yourself, say you've got your own email system, it can be a bit daunting because you have to basically add custom URL parameters onto the end of your destination URL. The good news is, if you're using, say, a platform like Campaign Monitor or MailChimp, there's ways of doing this sort of out the box. They make it really easy for you. And again, if you weren't aware of that and you're using, say, something like Campaign Monitor or MailChimp, I've got the links in the presentation. Go out and basically just tick the boxes to set that up for you, because it'll then take care of your email basically it'll create a custom medium for your email campaigns. If you don't do that, you'll see a lot of your email traffic come in perhaps as direct, or it'll get bucketed as a referral even. And you don't want to do that, because you want to be able to see sort of the spikes you get from your email campaigns. You want to know if there's maybe a halo effect, in the days following, if you send out an email and people come back to the site through maybe organic search, or they've bookmarked a page. So again, they can just be set up by, there's most email platforms have integrations, and I'd encourage you just to check them out. And likewise for social media buttons. So again, if people on your site, if they like a piece of content, or they like you, there is a way of getting that information into GA. On the sort of classic analytics, it's the method is called a track social method. And again, on the new universal analytics, there's a social core that you can add to the tag to pull in that social data, so you can get it into the social media reports. And again, if you're not technical, try not to worry about it, because again, if you're using like the most sort of common social media button sharing platforms, share this and add this, they've got integrations with classic analytics. And again, you can enable that out the box, and that's really easy to do. If you're using Universal Analytics, unfortunately, that doesn't integrate with these two platforms at the moment, but it's on the roadmap. So again, I would encourage you to consider doing that. If you need more help on campaign tracking in general, it's worth checking out Google's URL builder. So if you Google Analytics URL builder, it's a sort of a really easy to use interface, and it'll take you through how to build up the campaign tracking yourself.
Sure. And by the way, MailChimp, we use MailChimp extensively here, and it's just a field that you write every time you run a campaign. You just fill this field with your data, and you track it, and you have it in analytics, and you know exactly how that campaign goes. So I think it's very easy these days to do it.
Mm. Yeah, and again, it's something that you shouldn't be sort of afraid of, because more often than not, there are going to be people that are in similar situations to you, and there's a lot of integrations out there that do the hard work for you, especially if you're on, you're using things like WordPress, or if you're on, if you're using sort of campaign monitor or things like MailChimp. So that pretty much concludes what I was going to, the sort of the 10 sort of points I wanted to talk about today. I'm going to finish off. I've got some resources on the next couple of slides to share with you again. So if you want to learn more about GA in general, just put some links in there to the Help Center, the blog, the forum, Google Plus and Twitter. Google Plus, they put some really cool stuff on. It's worth adding them, to a circle. So it's worth checking that out. And then finally, if you really want to get into the techie side of things, there's this really good book called Advanced Web Metrics by a guy called Brian Clifton. He used to work for Google, and he knows GA inside out. So this will give you a really good head start on like maybe how to do some more of the techie stuff. I imagine there's going to be a new addition to the pipeline for Universal Analytics as well. And then finally, I've got some Chrome extensions here. Google Tag Assistant, that's really useful if you basically want to just check if your tag's firing. If you're a little bit more technical, there's something called Google Analytics Debugger. Again, you can see actually what data is being passed into the GA backend. Another really cool one is an extension called Straight to Google Analytics, which will just take you straight into GA, and you don't have to faff around with logging in. Another one we use from time to time is it's called Chart Intelligence. And that overlays useful chart data, data points onto your GA charts, onto the GA timeline. And then finally, Ghostery, that'll show you what tracking tags are set up on a site. And actually, in the last couple of weeks, Google have also released a new analytics Chrome extension as well, which allows you to get site usage data for the page on your site that you're browsing, and it'll actually overlay it onto the page. Again, that's pretty cool, and I'd encourage you'd find that really useful. And then I think finally as well, in the last couple of days, there is now an iPhone app as well, an official GA
Okay.
iPhone app, which you can download on the App Store as well.
Very good.
It's cool. So that pretty much concludes, the PowerPoint.
Fantastic, fantastic. So, John, if you just reconnect, we have 5 minutes more. I have just 3 questions for you. I'll wait for you here if you just go out and come back. This is
Okay.
like a Hangout on Air trick when I will write a book about Hangout on Air bugs after my 150 webcam interviews. Basically, when you do a Hangout on Air, in case you will do it in the future, remember that you go out of sync after you stop sharing your screen. But if you just reconnect, then you go back in sync. That's how it works. All right, John,
Hello,
I see you back. You're back. Right. Just 3 questions, very, very fast. Number 1 is a very stupid question, maybe from me, but I get the responsibility of it.
No problem.
Does exist a premium version of analytics, like a paid version of analytics with more features, or it's just that analytics is free and all the features are there?
Yeah. Okay. So there is a premium version of GA. And the reason sort of the premium version exists is you get a lot of enterprise level sites who have a lot of data, right? And for GA at the box by default, they have this thing called sampling. So sampling tends to kick in when you go over 500,000 sessions. And if you apply an advanced segment, I believe the sampling kicks in about 200,000 sessions. So for a big site, that's a real big issue because you want to have accurate data. You don't want to have sampled sort of site usage statistics. So the main USP of GA Premium is that unsampled data. There are other sort of data integrations as well. So if you use, say double-click advertising as well, you can pull in impression data as well into, say, your multi-channel funnels. So there's a few more sort of enterprise-level features which are required for them, and it has a sort of more robust SLA as well.
Okay, got it. And do you suggest for mobile tracking that analytics is just enough, or you think that analytics arrives until a certain point and then you need some other tool, tracking tool, more specific, more focused on mobile, or do you think that analytics is just enough?
GA can be enough. So I mean, my sort of advice is, I recommend to clients is you use, say, a tool like GA to maybe find and pinpoint a problem page, and then maybe consider then using what we would refer to as an in-page analytics tool then to get some more insight, for example. So say like when you have usability testing and you've got like a web form, and you know that the credit card page isn't working that well. That's when we would then say, okay, so maybe you want to consider using like an in-page analytics tool like Crazy Egg, and then to understand how that works, to basically get an insight on like form field dropout and those sort of how people are interacting with the page there. But yeah, it's useful to use a combination of tools again, to just help understand what's going on, and and come up with sort of optimizations to make pages better.
All right. Okay. Crazy Egg, by the way, great tool to have heat map, right?
That's it. Yeah.
To check where people go and where they click, basically. So, very good. John, I think we arrived at the end. I'm very hungry. I don't know about you, but I think everyone very hungry, but it was a very, very interesting session and super useful. I hope the people connected tried live to check in analytics all the different features. And I think that it's really underestimated most of the time what analytics can do, because I mean, I use analytics for the last 15 years probably of my life, and every time you discover something new, so it's very, very, very interesting. And my main takeaway, I would say, is if you haven't done it yet, move to Universal Tracker, because you get more features, and it can be the way to go. Is it?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I definitely think everyone should be considering doing it, and those auto migrations are happening, so you should definitely think about updating your tracking code.
Fantastic, fantastic. So, Jonathan, thank you so much. Jonathan Moore, SEO head, group head at Equimedia. Again, guys, congrats for all the things that you've done for the mobile strategies. We really appreciated your support and your enthusiasm. So, it was very good, very good.
Thank you very much.
If someone want to be in touch with you or want to follow you somewhere, do you have any Twitter handle?
Yeah, you can get hold of me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Nathan Ness, Nathan Less. If you've got any questions, you can get in touch with me there. I'm going to upload the deck onto SlideShare, and I'll have my contact, be my contact details on there as well. So, feel free to get in touch, or get in touch through the company website as well. I'd be more than happy to try and answer a couple of questions for you.
Fantastic, fantastic. John, thank you so much. And guys, we see you again 4 o'clock, so have a good gluten-free lunch or whatever you eat, and see you again 4 o'clock. John, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Bye.